Yes, nice to see you. Okay, very good, good. Uh-huh. Yes. Uh-huh. Yes. Yes. Okay. Great. Well, get it together and we look forward to looking at it. Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks for the intro. Yes, of course. Yes. Right? Yes. Good call. Bring yours down, right? Good. Are those two six papers?
Oh, great. It has our names.
Sure, why don't you sort of close to me? Stuff, you can always stick it in the bag if you need stuff. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today, whether you're in the room or joining us via Facebook or via web TV or via YouTube. We're so happy you're with us today for this conversation on World Television Day. My name is Jeff Brez, and I'm the Chief of NGO Relations, Advocacy, and Special Events here in the Department of Public Information at the United Nations. So thank you again for joining us. I'm sure, like me, you're excited to hear our panelists talk about how the UN and other organizations work with television and film professionals and other organizations to help advance their causes. World Television Day was actually first observed 10 years ago on November 21st in 1997. And the General Assembly passed a resolution, the General Assembly of the United Nations, of course, passed a resolution to establish the day in recognition of the impact television has on political decision-making by bringing world attention to the conflicts and threats to peace and security and the potential role of television in sharpening the focus on other major issues that the UN is dealing with, including economic and social and environmental issues. Over the past 20 years, as you all have lived through, the rapid growth of new digital platforms and social media has changed the way we consume television content and has changed the presentation of that content. In many ways, this has allowed all of us to engage more with audiences and allowed storytellers to engage more with their audiences and get feedback in many different ways on the content that they are actually creating and the stories that they're telling. So today we have 4 storytellers who will provide case studies of their collaborations between the entertainment industry and organizations that aim to advance important social, economic, and environmental causes. And we really hope that this conversation today will inspire more collaborations between the creative community and those of you who work on creating a more healthy and just world. So before I introduce our moderator and turn it over to the panel, I wanted to remind all of you in the room and wherever you're watching that so there will be the opportunity for those of you in the room to ask questions, obviously, of the panelists and share your comments. But even if you're not in the room, we do want to hear from you. So whether you're watching on Facebook, so that's UN Web TV, or on YouTube, again, so if you go to the United Nations channel, we're live on YouTube, or via Twitter using the hashtag World Television Day. Send us your comments and questions. We will be monitoring and we will bring them into the conversation. So it is now my pleasure to introduce my wonderful colleague, Mita Hosali, who is the Deputy Director of the United Nations News and Media Division, and she is going to moderate the panel. Please welcome, join me in warmly welcoming them. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Good afternoon, guests, colleagues, friends. It's my great pleasure to be here today and to bring to you this event on World Television Day. I am responsible for the news and video content of the United Nations, and it is an honor to have this brief, but it is also a challenge, as you can imagine, as we move into a digital era. So every working day, the United Nations has, for the last 70 years, produced and put out moving images. So those famous archival shots of Fidel Castro at the United Nations, of Khrushchev banging his shoe, and many others, is thanks to United Nations television. And that television feed continues till today. However, we began then with 35 millimeter format with the big reels, which some of you will look at me and say, what on earth is she talking about? Of course, now we provide things in high definition quality as well as online video formats. Increasingly, of course, we're providing content that can be viewed on mobile devices. And we're beginning to experiment with virtual reality, with 360 degrees, with drone footage, and all the exciting innovations that are gripping the world of television and video. A few years ago, the UN marked its 70th anniversary here, and a very interesting exhibit was curated called Unearth. And Unearth brought together some of the audiovisual archival materials of the UN. So there was amazing footage and stills of things like the Suez Crisis and of food drops being done in Nepal in the 1950s. The interesting thing is we still do some of this work, and we, of course, use new formats. So much has moved on in terms of format, but the imperative that drives us all, it kind of remains the same, because we are telling the story of the human condition. And we're really recounting narratives about people who are making a difference. So I'd encourage you to go to the website for the day. You'll see a remarkable story about how UN videos are shot in the field. And in particular, I will draw your attention to a blog done by a videographer who was sent to one of the most dangerous missions, peacekeeping missions the UN runs, called MINUSMA in Mali. Her name was Dana Fletio, and I really do want to pay tribute to her. This mission was set up in 2013, and she decided to go and work there. And she said basically that she was somewhere in the north of Mali, waiting with a colleague in an airport nearly destroyed by a suicide attack. We were going to travel even further north. Just a few months before, I had been sitting in my comfortable International Monetary Fund office in Washington, D.C., where I'd headed up the video team. The sudden need to get back into the field made me trade my job in the Global Financial Organization for a UN peacekeeping operation. She set off with a Chadian peacekeeper driving the UN armored car, while 2 others were protecting the convoy. And he was a 20-year-old soldier from Chad who'd already fought in wars against Boko Haram in Chad and Nigeria before he was sent to Mali. She came back from getting the most wonderful footage, and you can see this video about a day in the life of a peacekeeper in Mali on our website dedicated to this day, World Television Day. She came back, she was in the UN compound, and there was a loud explosion. She said, "I will never know what exactly saved my life, the UN's 21st century radar technology or the ancestral Chadian Grigri amulet filled with magical herbs. Maybe both. I was leaving the mission, but I knew this had not been just another job experience to be added to my CV. It had profoundly changed the course of my life." I think I'm sitting alongside a group of luminaries, remarkable people, celebrities, who have decided to use their work in the world of television and the digital video domain to become engaged with important issues that the UN is concerned with. I would like to start by introducing, on my immediate left, Surinder Swan. She is an actress. She has played lots of roles in film as well as television, most recently in ABC's Inhumans and HBO's Ballers. In her role as FBI agent Paige Arkin, some of you may have seen her there in Graceland, she was able to turn the series into a tool to raise awareness about human trafficking. And we're going to show you a short PSA that she created with her co-star, Daniel Sunyata, for the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. So if you just turn your attention to the screens for a moment.
If you were fleeing from danger in your country and someone gave you a way out.
If you had to escape from an abusive home and someone offered you safe housing.
If you desperately needed a job and someone offered you one.
What would you do?
Every year, more than 1 million women, lured by fake promises of safety and security, are trafficked for sexual exploitation and forced labor.
This modern-day slavery takes place in almost every country around the world, including ours.
You can help. Please find out more and donate to the United Nations Trust Fund for Victims of Human Trafficking.
This is a a topic that's very close to your heart, and quite by coincidence, the Security Council is discussing human trafficking today, and the Secretary General is speaking out on this matter. We know the figures are absolutely devastating if you stop to look at them. Can you tell us a little bit about how you were able to blend your role in Graceland with the activism on the issue of human trafficking?
Yeah, absolutely. I watched a documentary in 2012 on sex trafficking, and I remember I'm from Canada. I was born in Vancouver, and I like to say that I won the geographic lottery at birth. I was born with my rights. I was born with a voice, education, all of that. And it wasn't until later in my life that I realized what a privilege that truly was. My body was my own. It wasn't at risk of being sold. And when I found out that 1.2 million women and children get sold every year into this industry, it blew my mind. And that the average age is 13 years old. And in some countries, they have the life expectancy of 3 years. So once I learned that, I was like, oh, okay, so my life has to be for something more. My voice has to be for something more. And how do I do that? And I'm in one of the most narcissistic industries, the entertainment industry, where literally it is my face that I'm asking you to look at. So I figured my voice should be something that matters personally, but then I was given an opportunity to make it, my personal voice become the voice of my character. So I played a DEA agent on the show, and drug trafficking is the #1 criminal enterprise in the world, and human trafficking is the second. So I figured, well, my character would be very well versed in what goes on day to day, and a lot of the time the two of them go hand in hand. And I was about 4 years into this kind of crusade against sex trafficking, and I'd spent time in Cambodia and Malaysia and Thailand and sat in brothels and rescue shelters and things like that. And so I knew that I wanted my voice to become the voice of my character. So I figured out a way with the UN Foundation and my friends at the UN and some of the other organizations that I worked with. I figured out a way to kind of hand my showrunner and my writers a package from one episode to the entire second season of our show, revolving around anti-sex trafficking. And the one that I pushed for the hardest was that my DEA character was going to be sold into a sex trafficking ring here in the United States, and we were going to be able to see what these women went through, not only locally, but also internationally, how they came to our country, what happened once they were there, the promises that they were told, and that it isn't a woman in prostitution, it is a slave that is being used for sex, and to try to help change that conversation. And so I had no idea what was going to happen. We just sent it all in. And 2 months later, I got a call from my showrunner saying, congratulations, the sex trafficking storyline is going to be used, and it's going to be our A plot, and you are going to be sold into a sex trafficking ring, so get ready. And for 6 months, my voice as Serinda was my character, Paige's voice. So I would go to work every day and just kind of like bawl on the way there and bawl on the way back, and just really felt like I was able to make sure that I didn't have a podium, that I had a platform. And what I really cared about was beside me on that platform. And I was able to share the stories of the girls that I had met along the way. So, thank you.
So you mentioned, you've spent time in Southeast Asia.
Yes.
And you've also been working with organizations, and some of the more recent organizations that you've worked with, Friends for Mankind.
Yes.
And 18 for 18, but there have been others as well.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about how they've tried to advance, the advocacy around these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. 18 for 18 was a fundraiser that I started immediately after I got back from Cambodia. I was sitting in a rescue shelter, and they needed $18,000. And at that point, I wasn't on Twitter, I didn't know how to use social media, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna log on to Twitter, and there's millions of people that I can get my message out to, right? So I'm just gonna tell millions of people what's going on, and they're gonna care, and they're gonna give me money. This is great, I love Twitter. And then I got on Twitter and was like, where's the millions of people? How do I get people to care? Because I always say there's, school really educate, you have the education of the mind, but what we're missing is the education of the heart. And I truly believe that if we educate the heart, that we are going to see people making change in this world, not because they're special or different, but just because the capacity to care is already within them. And so I was like, I just need this capacity to care to show up. I had no followers, so it didn't show up. And I decided that I was going to throw myself out of a plane at 18,000 feet, which is North America's highest skydive, and I would get $1 a foot. I figured, well, if you're not going to give me money just randomly, then can you sponsor $1 a foot? And we raised about $38,000, so a lot of people wanted to throw me out of a plane. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we raised $38,000 that year. And to date, we've raised almost $700,000 just by throwing me and my friends out of planes every year. So I didn't think that one through because they keep doing it. But that's something that we've been able to reach, I think just over 200 million people with our voice now and our message. So when we come together and we create these awareness campaigns or these fundraisers, and working with Friends to Mankind, they were able to push out my message the first year we did it to thousands and thousands of people. So to be a friend to mankind, to stand up and do what you can where you are, that was one of the biggest pushes that I had that really kind of united my cause, and I was able to to get people to think that it wasn't so crazy that I wanted to jump out of a plane for anti-sex trafficking. So yeah, it's been interesting. It's been, I've obviously worked with the UN Foundation and many other organizations out there, but I think it brings the world together. I think it's something that, makes the world a smaller place and realizes that we really can make change.
So as you said, I mean, you had, I guess, the real courage to jump out of a plane at 18,000 feet.
Courage, stupidity, one of the two.
Well, you said it, I didn't. But the fact is that not everybody can do that naturally. And people often want to know how they can influence this, how the ordinary citizen, younger people, can take part in these kinds of campaigns. Now, I know you're working on an app. So I think it would be really interesting to hear a little bit more about what exactly you're planning to do with this app.
Sure. I watched another documentary called Racing Extinction, which actually the UN building had a huge part of. During the documentary, there are statistics of endangered species that were projected across the UN and many other buildings around the world. And I remember looking at this shot of a young boy looking at I think it was the statistics of wild cheetahs. And it was a number that was shocking and horrifying to him. And you could see he looks up at his mom, and his mother has the exact same look. And it's something that you would think the mother would be like, yes, I know, isn't this horrible? This is something that I'm aware of. But there's a gap in education there. So my thought was, wow, if this child doesn't get an education on world issues between now and when he's his mother, the video that he's going to be watching or the documentary he's going to be a part of is not going to be called Racing Extinction. It's going to be called Extinction. And if we don't have that education and we don't harness the capacity to care, we're really going to get into some trouble here. And so I found a business partner and developed an app that basically redirects pre-existing donations and new donations through the minds and hearts of children, and then activates them into activists. So if you were to donate to the UN Foundation, instead of directing your donations to them, you would go through our education app, which is called Deedly, like good deeds. And what we do is we show the kids for 5 days a 2 to 3 minute video every morning on the issues that you care about. So the world water crisis, famine, the environment, anti-bullying, health and wellness. And so they have a 5-day, it's a full month-long curriculum, but it would be a 5-day curriculum on the UN Foundation. They watch the video in the morning, and then they answer a quiz. And by answering the quiz, they unlock your donation dollars. And we're a nonprofit, so 100% of your donation goes directly back to the cause that you donated to. So we're trying to kind of hack that system, and make sure that while these kids are sitting in the classroom, that they're also learning about world issues in a way that they can really be empowered. We're not just telling them about something that's happening and then leaving them to figure it out. They actually get to see where their money goes and how much a dollar does within the organization, whether it's building a new well or buying a jerry can or educating a child or saving a panda. You really get to see what that dollar does. So I think we just started doing our test schools. I think we're in about 220 schools right now. But my goal is to be able to harness the capacity of the heart in a way that I was taught in my family, but do it on a global level.
So am I right in assuming that these schools are mostly in the US or in North America, or are they around?
Worldwide. We actually just put our entire curriculum into Spanish and Hebrew. It's going to be worldwide. This is something that we want all children to be able to see and be educated on these issues. So I'm really excited to be able to see how this works, and our distribution will be coming out this year. And yeah, I'm excited.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'd like to move next to Neil Weinberg, who's here today also following a career in the world of media and in online advertising. You started at ABC, but then you did some online advertising for the New York Times and for Wall Street Journal. I mean, you did help design this, is what I'm saying. But now, what is consuming a lot of your time is a reality feature news series called Aspirist.com. And the purpose behind this is to encourage millennials to reflect on the lives of others and to stand up for something. And you've got some big names involved in this, people like Ben Affleck and Adrian Grenier and others, but you've also encouraged just individuals to take part. Absolutely. So it has an unusual format. Can you just explain how it works and how you came up with this?
Sure.
Oh, we have a video that we're going to show you first.
Okay, great.
I think it's time that we tell stories about things that matter.
We don't have to live this way. Things don't have to be the way they've always been.
I'm going to be bold and say this can be the voice of this generation.
America is based on capitalism, but also equally a democracy. If you're just caring about the capitalist side, you're just doing 50% of what America's supposed to be.
The last thing I did was create the Malala Fund with the youngest Nobel Peace Prize winner, Malala.
I'm the grandson of Jacques Cousteau, environmental activist, filmmaker, social entrepreneur, and author.
I'm a singer-songwriter. I was part of the United Nations campaign to end violence against women.
I'm a stand-up comedian, and I have a podcast, Last Week on Earth, to get people to look at issues a different way than they ever have.
I started Gender Proud, advocating for transgender rights.
I founded the Thirst Project, which today is the world's largest youth water activism organization.
What is the show about? But inspiring other people to aspire.
This is a story about the organization called Girl Up. I went to their annual gathering in Washington, D.C., where we met up with identical twin sisters, Brooklyn and Bailey McKnight, who are huge YouTube stars, and wanted them to tell us a little bit about what they're doing. Let's check it out.
I'm Brooklyn. And I'm Bailey. In 2013, Bailey and I started our own channel called Brooklyn and Bailey. Go subscribe to our channel if you are not already subscribed. We have over 4 million subscribers. The kind of things that we're inspiring would just be to stand up and be yourself and share the kind of message that you are empowered by. Breaking out of like the social standard of like women being like, they have to be a certain thing. I think it's important that girls take their voice and actually share it. The best way to show someone that you do have a voice is by using it.
Anybody feeling like a diva this morning? Yeah? Look who it is.
We are here in Washington, D.C. attending the Girl Up Summit as their newest champions.
So we have an ongoing campaign, Strawless Oceans, and one of the first campaign videos that we put out was called Sucker Punch. We have this booth, and an angry octopus comes from the ocean onto land to slap some sense into us and tell us, hey, stop sucking. Please, people, stop sucking.
Kim Kardashian, we will stop sucking if you do. Rachel Ray, it's time to stop sucking.
We really do need to stop sucking on single-use plastic straws. In our lifetime, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. That's a staggering reality.
That's quite fascinating. Inspire people to aspire to things. And of course, this year, the United Nations held an ocean conference earlier this year. Adrian Grenier was here at the time, and all this is very, very timely. So why don't you tell us now exactly how you've created this format and
Sure.
how you go about kind of bringing this to life?
Yeah, I think the idea came to us as we were, part of what our company does is we publish stories into all of the social media news feeds. That's a big part of our company. We're a social media ad agency. And what we found is every time we published a story that actually mattered, there was more engagement, there was more clicks, there was more sharing. And the way we would come up with these stories in the early days, we would get a lot of people from the co-working space where we had our offices, all different companies, a lot of millennials in one space. And we said, gee, we kind of have a TMZ-like show here, but very different if you know TMZ. Not about car crashes and bikini vacations, but about stories that truly matter. What you just saw is one segment that we have, which is called Look to the Stars. And as you said, we had Ben Affleck this season. We went to the Sudan with George Clooney. Ian Somerhalder and Nikki Reed did an amazing piece on animal shelters. That's one aspect. We do a lot of original in-depth pieces, but the idea was all of our hosts are former TED Talk hosts, big influencers, a lot of followers like you probably now have after jumping out of a plane, and every single segment has a call to action. So we did a story about in Fort Detrick where the U.S. used to make chemical weapons and they decided not to make them anymore, put those chemicals in barrels, buried them 35 years ago, and guess what? 35 years later, they start to rust and they go into the aquifer, and there's a cancer cluster there. And so our call to action was fill out this petition, and we got 70,000 signatures. So that's we're trying to tell stories that matter, and what the UN has been such a terrific partner in is bringing us stories and some ambassadors to help tell those stories.
So you've been working with one specific part of the UN environment. So what are some of the projects that you've been working on with them?
Well, primarily for this season, it was the UN Foundation. But what we are going to be working on, what we're starting to work on now, is an event around World Water Day. And so got in contact with Andrew Hudson, who you may know. When we started to look at the issue of water, it's really hard, at least for me, to get our arms around. There's just so many organizations, and there's so many issues and scarcity stories. And so the UN suggested this incredible woman, like the incredible women up here, who's going to be running 100 marathons in 100 days. Everybody reacts of, how is that possible? And so we'll be with her, with a crew, telling these incredible stories around the world, like in Uzbekistan, where the Aral Sea used to have water, but it's been drained to create cotton. Whereas in China, they're using a solar process that's not as water intensive. In India, apparently they throw out as much food as they eat. In the UK, and sometimes a banana that they throw out because of a little bruise, it took 20 gallons to grow that banana. So at any rate, we're not only partnering with the UN to find stories like that, but the UN, in my opinion, has the best data. And so part of what we do is we create data visualizations because they tell great stories in a snapshot really quickly. And so we're working with various people throughout the UN to make sure that we're going to present that data in a way that they want. But most important, what I'm most proud of is as we all know, a lot of organizations put out a video, post it, and they get a total of 93 views. We have partnered with Time Inc., so this is going to run a version of this journey and data visualization in People Magazine, in Time Magazine, in Fortune Magazine, on Facebook, on YouTube. And we're going to reach 120 million people. I think that's what's most important, to tell that story to as many people as possible.
In fact, I noticed that some of your videos, very simple videos, they've got over 1 million views. I mean, a day in somebody's life in Nepal, for example, has garnered a huge engagement.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That tells a story of its own, I think.
Definitely, yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So our third panelist is Resham Nijon, and I actually stumbled over her name because it's not an easy name I don't know how phonetically one can pronounce it, and I should be used to it being here at the UN, but I thought I would check. So Resham has a long history of producing on television and film, and she's worked with lots of organizations on important global and political issues. She's worked on rebel music for MTV, and she's recently been working on a film following the adoption and then the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. So we're going to take a look at her latest project, which is called Girly, and it's about female empowerment. So let's just view the sizzle reel for this.
The first and only female rapper in Afghanistan.
میگی که با وجدان باش زنسی در زندان باش تو مدرسه مدرسی
I'm a Palestinian. I hold an Israeli ID. Every person in the world thinks that I am something else, which basically I'm none of all of these things.
My name is Jamira Burley, and I am a part of the United Nations Youth Advocacy Group.
One of the biggest issues of our time is gun violence.
This is my fountain of life, being an artist. I have doing it all my life, and I cannot stop.
Every woman that I know in India has been violated in some way or another. Rape culture seeps into every little thing. I'm going to do everything that I can to fight it.
It is time to stand up for our right to know and our freedom of choice.
So we saw the name of Rashida Jones. We know she's a co-producer of this, and you're working with her and Refinery 29. So could you tell us a little bit about how you're shaping Girly?
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, Girly is a project that I think is very timely, given all that's happening in the world. It always feels timely, but particularly now, it's something I think that's on everybody's mind. And Rashida came on because I don't know how many folks are familiar with Rashida and her activist work, but she's actually very involved with women's issues, and she's been an excellent support to the team. And I think as far as it goes with TV, celebrities go a long way. So it's been really, really amazing to have somebody on board who supports the project and who can bring some of that heft to it, but with real thoughtfulness, not just about, you know, putting a name on something, but actually believing in it, understanding the issues, and helping to push it forward in a way that really represents what we're trying to do. And Refinery 29, are folks familiar with Refinery 29? A little bit, yes. So Refinery 29 is one of the largest digital brands for women. They're, you know, they're getting over 500 million views across all of their channels a month. So they're really tapping into the zeitgeist of women. And 30% of their audience is actually men, which I was really interested to learn. Yeah. And, you know, so they've been an excellent support on this as well, because, you know, part of what Neil was talking about is we want to make something that people are going to actually see. It's great to make something really wonderful and beautiful, and then 93 views is a little bit of a bummer, you know, because the idea is that we're trying to reach an audience and we're trying to get people to engage. So having a partner like that, like Refinery, who can automatically bring that digital and social and very engaged audience to the television show, I think has been a real boost to what we're trying to do. And I think, you know, the whole idea behind Girly is to bring issues and, you know, similar to what Aspirus is, you know, talking about issues in a way that makes it accessible for people. And, you know, specifically in this case, you know, for us, I'm most interested in how do we actually go beyond this idea of perfection for women and girls, you know, that women and girls have to, I don't know, do people feel like that? There's like a sense that women and girls have to be very proper, very perfect. Yeah? Yes? No? And that, and I think that that's not so great, a word that I won't use at the UN. But I think that the idea is that we want to focus on women who are truly whole and flawed at the same time and doing great work. So how do we create a TV show that is a real deep dive into women's lives and elevates beyond just a profile, but really gets into why is it that we, each of us, all of us, women or men, choose to do what we do, what motivates us, what are the universal themes that we can connect on, whether we're in Nigeria, whether we're in the USA, whether we're in Cambodia, and how do we do that in a way that's empowering to the audience, but not alienating You know, you don't have to know about all the hard politics to watch our show. You don't have to know all the details of the issues or the things that are being uncovered around the world. You can just watch it as a real person and see a story about a real person that you can emotionally connect to. And that's what we're most excited about.
I think you called it, or somebody called it, rule-defying storytelling. So hopefully you will kind of challenge and defy rules in the process as well.
That's the idea. I'm curious, actually. I know everybody's listening intently, which is great. I'm always curious to hear from people. We're at World TV Day, and this is such an interesting, diverse audience. What are some TV shows that you all watch? Just Simpsons, okay. This Is Us. Yeah, that's a great one.
Yes.
Well, new ones. We have somebody at the back.
Yes. Outlander, yeah, stars. That's a good one.
Gilmore Girls.
Okay. Gilmore Girls, that's good. See, women, strong female characters like Serinda. Sorry, I think I think. Does anybody watch nonfiction TV? Vice News. BBC. Sci-fi. Okay. Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting time for TV because you have all these great platforms, because you have it on your phone, you have Hulu, you have Netflix, you have all these different things that you can connect with. And, our idea is that how can we really use the current, I think, spotlight on pop culture and get to people that way, because not everybody typically engages with these issues or cares to engage with these issues, which is also why I think Serinda, what you did is so powerful, because you wrapped it into pop culture and it wasn't like a lecture for people. Like, nobody wants to do homework when they come home after work. They want to watch something fun. It's got to be adventurous. It's got to be. So I think that's probably what we're all trying to do, and the hope is that's what we can achieve with Girly.
And it's interesting, but video on demand, I mean, people think that it's something that only millennials enjoy, or Generation X, but increasingly they find that other age groups, other demographics are also watching a lot more video on demand. And they're not just watching it for entertainment purposes, but they're watching it for movies and then for news as well. So, I mean, I think the whole kind of medium is changing so dramatically.
Yes.
Okay, so you spent months filming at the UN and following the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed.
Yes.
You traveled with her. Can you tell us a little bit about where that story is now?
Sure. Amina is truly, she's a firecracker. She's wonderful. She's just one of the most amazing characters that we've had the privilege of spending time with. And, as Mita was saying, we are working on a film about sort of the process of making the sausage, making the SDGs, and what that looked like. And it's been a very, very, it's been fun. We've spent quite a bit of time here at the UN, and our editor for the film is here, and she's listening intently, trying to figure out how she's going to make this film work. But the idea is that we're working on a film that tells a story about what's happening at the UN, but the heart of it is, why is it important that we collaborate as global cooperation, which in America right now feels like a very urgent issue, something that we all want to be talking about because of the current political climate, whatever folks' affiliations might be. But Amina being at the center of that was very interesting, to have a female character kind of at the center of what was happening. And although, she was just one piece of a much larger team and what was happening, what we find with storytelling is that people really like to grab onto something emotional and to find a character or somebody that they can relate to in order to then dip into the story. So that was our idea, is that how do we get people to care about the SDGs without just, making a great a beautiful series about this is the 1 through 17 goals. How do we make something that's emotional and human, and watch the people of, who were here at the UN, what they went through to make this happen. And our hope is that their journey will get people to care about it.
I think you put your finger on it when you use the word collaboration, because it really is about collaboration and partnerships. And we're always looking for new venues and new means of concluding these partnerships so that we can have our videos as well watched by more than 93 people.
Right. So you really coined that number,
Neil. Now it's stuck in everyone's head. So I'd like to introduce our last but not least panelist, my colleague, Carlos Islam, who in some ways has probably one of the most envied jobs here in the Department of Public Information, because he gets to do good, but he works with the entertainment industry. And he's had a lot of opportunities to really conclude some interesting partnerships. For example, you've worked with Sony Pictures in recent times, and the latest project, of course, involved Smurfs, The Lost Village. So we're going to show a PSA about that, and then we're going to grill Carlos about his job.
Hey, I'm Demi Lovato.
My name is Mandy Patinkin. This is Joe Manganiello.
Hi, I'm Michelle Rodriguez. I voice Smurfette.
Papa Smurf. I'm the voice of Hefty.
Smurf Storm. What's your deal, anyway? In the upcoming animated movie Smurfs: The Lost Village. Nothing makes a Smurf happier than seeing people help each other and protect the planet.
And guess what? The United Nations has a plan to do just that. Go on, go on. It's called the Sustainable Development Goals.
There are 17 goals. They include things like getting all girls and boys into schools, keeping our land and oceans clean,
Whoa! Making sure everybody is healthy and has enough nutritious food to eat,
and clean, safe water to drink. Our world is a big place, but each and every one of us can make a difference, regardless of our size. All of us, even a small Smurf,
can help achieve big goals.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to ride my bike home.
Well done.
I'm going to commit to not waste food.
I'm going to take public transportation.
Fire in the hole!
Get ideas at smallsmurfsbiggoals.com.
Join Team Smurf to help our world.
Change is in your hands. Right, guys?
Now that looked like a lot of fun, but I know it was a lot of hard work as well. So tell us a little bit about how you worked on this collaboration with Sony.
Well, that was the second collaboration we had with Sony Pictures Entertainment. So for 2 years, in 2016 and 2017, we worked with Sony on the first year with the Angry Birds movie, and then the second year with the Smurfs movie. And both times were campaigns that were based around the International Day of Happiness, which takes place in March. So for a month ahead of the day, we had these online digital and digital campaign with Sony Pictures. The first one was to make the Angry Birds happy by taking action on climate change, and that was a big success. And then the second one was the Small Smurfs Big Goals campaign, where we promoted the Sustainable Development Goals. So in both cases, we had created a website where people could go and take action and learn more about climate action or Sustainable Development Goals. And there were also PSAs, like the one you just saw, with the voice actors on the film. So, you know, the first year we had the comedians Jason Sudeikis and Maya Rudolph and Josh Gad supporting the campaign with PSAs. We also had a PSA with the Angry Birds and our Secretary General at the time, Ban Ki-moon, which got over 400,000 views just on the UN digital channels, which is pretty big for a Secretary General video. And then the second year, we worked with Sony again with the Smurfs movie. And the idea was that, you know, the Smurfs are a happy bunch, and what makes them happy is that they work together, they work with the planet, not against the planet, and they live sustainably. And fortunately, although there are 99 male Smurfs and 1 Smurfette, in this movie, the Lost Village is all girl Smurfs, and so there was gender balance and equality as well. So that helped us a lot. And you know, as you can see from these figures, you know, it was, for us, it's a huge success. I mean, just on Twitter, we had a potential of 823 million impressions throughout this campaign, and it was very similar with the Angry Birds campaign. But the great thing about working with a studio like Sony is that they have their own TV networks around the world, and you know, they poured in a lot of resources into, you know, really pushing this campaign and the messaging, and you know, so it's 78 countries, with over 300 million subscribers. They showed the PSAs, almost 15,000 times. And in terms of TV advertising, that's millions of dollars that we don't have, obviously, to spend on this type of thing that goes into promoting the campaign. So that's basically the two campaigns in a nutshell.
78 countries, but something that you didn't mention, which is a very important issue here at the UN, is in how many languages this was done, because we can't assume that the world is Anglophone. And the success to actually having this kind of impact is the fact that, again, Sony put a lot of resources into language versions, but you can speak to that, of course.
Yeah, so, we have 6 official languages at the UN, which we try and put all our products out in all of those 6 languages, and it's very difficult because of time constraints, resources, and Sony, they did that. The website and the social media messaging was in at least the 6 official languages. They also added, I think, Japanese and Portuguese and some other very common languages that people use.
Okay, so we've had at the UN quite a few opportunities where films have been made here, based on your connections with the creative community. So what's next in the pipeline with the entertainment industry? What have you got up your sleeve?
So we're trying to get Surinder to play the lead role in an upcoming action UN. Not really. Just this weekend. So the UN itself, the location here at headquarters and in other places around the world have been used as the set for TV and movies where it's appropriate, when the story fits and it tells you something about the work of the UN. And just last weekend, my colleagues were working on a on-location shoot with a Bollywood production that has women's health issues at its heart, and it's based on I won't go too much into it, but it's called Padman, and it's to do with sanitary issues for women. But it's a real-life story, and it's all singing and dancing Bollywood production that took part here. So look out for Padman. And we're also working with Mattel, the toy company for, the target demographic is much younger than this room, but it's with their TV series called Thomas and Friends, which when I was a kid was called Thomas the Tank Engine. And it's an animated series that in the past had all male tank engines and was set in this fictional island, and now they're moving out in the real world, and they're incorporating issues on the UN agenda like refugees, gender equality, and environmental issues. They're incorporating that into the storyline of Thomas and Friends, and they're also creating these standalone for YouTube sort of life lessons, they're calling it, where they actually talk directly to the kids about the issues that they've just seen in Thomas and Friends. And then finally, we're Pictures TV networks, not Sony Pictures Entertainment. We have a slide, I think, on a global short film festival called Picture This. So they're asking young emerging filmmakers and content creators and change makers like yourself to submit films about a future world that you'd like to see. And it's all based on the Sustainable Development Goals. And so we'll be supporting by helping with the briefs on the Sustainable Development Goals, giving feedback on the content where it relates to the goals. And then there'll be 7 regional winners from around the world, and they'll be brought to Sony Studios in LA in July next year and given an immersive experience in filmmaking, and get to talk to people from the UN as well about the goals a bit more. And so this will be launched in January. I think you can go, it's live today, SonyPictureThis.com, SonyPictureThis.com, and sort of sign up for more information. And the call for submissions will go out in January. So that's a few of the things that we're working on.
Okay. So before we throw it open to the audience for your questions, I just want to mention that the The UN video section, formerly known as UN Television, actually also collaborates with Plural Plus and has a film competition every year to encourage young filmmakers who produce films around the issue of tolerance. And this year, some of the winning entries had to do with the issue of migrants and diversity and other such issues that, of course, are being faced in different societies around the world. Okay, so we've all blathered on for a while now, so here's your opportunity to raise your hand and ask questions. It could be about the work the UN does in this field, or, of course, any question to your colleagues, to our panelists here. You know, we usually have a nameplate that would say if you come from Palau or from Guinea-Bissau, but I can't identify you, so go right ahead.
No problem. My name's Elizabeth. I'm from Australia. I work here at the UN. And one thing I've always wondered, and I was interested by Surinder's statements about how she took a storyline to her showrunner. I've always thought that we could have a great drama series set in the UN, similar to The West Wing, or something like that. Because after working here for quite some time, I can see, and we have shows like Veep, all of those. I wondered if you ever see a future of selling that type of story to your showrunner, that Carlos could then move into making a drama series.
Yes, absolutely. We will talk after this. Yeah, I think it's so important. It's kind of what I call the Blood Diamond effect. We all went and saw most of us went and saw the Blood Diamond because it was Leonardo DiCaprio and it was entertaining and it was in the movie theaters and it was all that. And we left being like, where did this come from? You know, and it was an awareness that was infused into us through entertainment. So if we could do something on that platform, on the UN level, and disguise it as just sort of like what you relax and watch at night. Because that's how I learned about anti-sex trafficking, is I literally turned on the television for background noise. I got back from set that day, I was exhausted, I just turned on the TV so that I could hear something, and I started hearing something. And what I heard I didn't know, and I didn't know I even cared about it. And so immediately, it went from entertainment into something that was life-changing. And I think that's an incredible idea. I'm so down to do it. If this is live on Facebook, it's our idea. We're taking it. It's ours. Carlos, we're already, this panel, you can write, you can produce, we'll make it happen.
Actually, I was going to say that when we started filming here about a year and a half ago, I think I even said this to Carlos, like, I think this would be, if everyone just talks in acronyms all the time, it would be hilarious. Because it's true. Like, people would be like, I remember the first day I got here, someone asked me, is this tweet sound okay? It was like, you know, CBDR this. I'm like, I promise you that tweet is not going anywhere. But, yeah.
No, it's very difficult. Yeah, the acronyms are insane here. You just have to kind of smile and nod, and then you just walk into it. I'm like, I'm just going to go to the restroom, and then I'm Googling what all of them are. When I was in the refugee camp, it was a separate language, basically. And then I'd hear English words, and I was like, oh, no, it's all English. I just don't understand what people are saying. But yes, I think that's a phenomenal idea. I think it's right on brand with, I think, what all of us are trying to do here is infiltrate the entertainment system and make sure we're held responsible. We have voices and we have platforms, and it is important that we use that voice and that platform for something of good.
And you now have a celebrity attached to it.
Yes, I am attached to this project. We are doing this. I am so down.
Okay, now Carlos.
Oh, yeah, I'll try.
Maybe you have something up his sleeve this time. Honestly.
We do have. I mean, we with the help of the UN Foundation, we've been going to LA over several years, trying to make connections, and people have come to us with ideas about a West Wing style at the UN. And somehow it never quite gets off the ground, but there are things that are sort of on the boil, as it were, and there's a writer, producer, director in the room who created the show Dexter. I think a lot of you would have seen, and also won an Emmy for his episode that he wrote for The Sopranos, and he's given me the nod that he'd like to say something on this very issue. So Jim Manos is over there.
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, no, Carlos has been extraordinary. I've been working with Carlos for the last, I guess, close to 2 years now on exactly the show you mentioned. And I can say that after developing it over 2 years, it's gone a long way. And we've gotten to the point now where WME, William Morris Endeavor, is my active partner on the project. And we are talking to some seriously large production companies. And in fact, on the 7th of December, I should know whether or not the project will be funded. But it's exactly what you're talking about. Essentially, it's all about a silo of women working at the UN that is mandated to basically save all the forgotten women all over the world. And it's all about their struggles and how they do it and all the successes. Because I think, quite frankly, part of it has to do with the fact that the UN has a certain kind of identity problem to make sure that everybody in the world knows how hard everybody here works and how much they actually do accomplish. But again, it's entirely gender-focused and based on gender violence. So I think there is certainly a great market for that. And finally, it takes forever, as you all know up there. Everything in Hollywood takes forever to get made. But I think we finally got the traction that we needed. And again, because of all the great help that I've gotten from Carlos and his team of women that he's introduced me to that work here, is so inspirational. And I'm a single dad with a daughter, and I think there's a certain legacy type of thing here at this point in my life. So I would love to talk to all of you soon.
Love to talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think because I'm a pretty bright guy, but I mean, it's such a massive undertaking that it would require, a lot of collaboration, as was mentioned before. So, Carlos, I appreciate you bringing that up because it is something that's very, very actively being pursued.
Fantastic. Okay, so we have a hand here, and then we have a hand over there, and then I'll take a few more, please.
So, Surinder, does it create a conflict for you when you hear of such a project like this that you want to either be on the producing side or you want to be on the acting side?
I want to be on any side. At the end of the day, it's yes, a dream would be to actually be in it or assist it in any capacity. But at the end of the day, yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of conflicts, and there's also, it's a sticky world. But I think anything you can do to bring light to those issues, I'll either be, the biggest fan and one of the loudest voices out there championing the show, or if there's an opportunity, you look for things like that to get involved, where when you hear that it's still in the developmental phase, you're like, what can I do? How can I help? What do I have or who do I know? Because that's the kind of entertainment that I want to see and I want to be able to be a part of. It matters and it means something, and it's another opportunity for my personal voice to be the voice of my character. Because as a woman, I haven't really had that opportunity. A lot of what I say has nothing to do with who I am.
But I mean, is there if you're producing several shows, you have a much wider reach. On the other hand, you can't be in everything because
True.
You don't have enough time in a day. So how do you make a decision which thing you?
Well, I mean, I feel like in that sense, you got to talk to like Dwayne Johnson, because I feel like he produces everything and is in everything, so it's possible. So, I'll figure it out. I'll totally figure it out. High class problems. Yeah, well, we'll figure it out. When it's something as important as that type of a show, you figure it out for sure.
Okay, we can go to the next question.
My name is Joanna Meyer. I'm with an NGO called African Views. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I know that there's a lot of people who watch football or who watch mainstream sports, especially in the U.S., since there hasn't been a lot of attention on the SDGs, and Trump has backed us out of the climate agreement. So I'm wondering if there's, because of the incidents of human trafficking related to major sporting events, if there's a way for the UN to partner on PSAs with the major, with the football leagues and the basketball and things like this. Or your thoughts on that. I mean, I'm sure there's a way to partner on it.
We'd love, if you know anybody, we'd love to. It's not as easy as, there's a lot of good people who especially work in the CSR arms of large organizations like the Premier League in the UK and the Olympics, but to actually get into their space and use their real estate is there's a lot of competition that's paying a lot of money for that. So it's very difficult, even if they want to do it. So we're trying with sporting organisations. We're talking to the International Olympic Committee for the Winter Games in Korea and for the Summer Games in Tokyo, I think, in 2020. So, but if you know anyone at the NFL who would be happy to help us, then please put us in touch.
Okay, we have another question on this side.
I would like to address this to Sardina. First of all, I would like to say congratulations on the phenomenal work you're doing. I came from a small country, Guyana, and we have a major problem with human trafficking, especially kids. And you have such a great program. How can you incorporate our country? It's a very small country. It's the only English-speaking country in South America. How can you help us?
I know your country very well. One of my best friends, Justin, is from there. So, hi, Justin. Well, one of the things that I wanted to make sure in building this app and in creating this was that it's free. It's 100% free, and it can be done on a phone, on a computer. It can be done through a projection system. You download an app. So I was trying to figure out what is the easiest way and the quickest way we can get this information to all. We're also going to be doing a paper version of it. So if we're working in countries that don't even have access to any sort of electronic equipment, we want to make sure that we can do that. It's our goal to reach everyone, absolutely everyone at the end of the day. And so we're working on issues that are not only here in North America, but that are across the world. And we're bringing situations that children really relate with. Like, we're doing the water crisis, and we send a 40-pound jerry can to the classroom. And they watch a little kind of clip on a 12-year-old girl that carries it 3 miles every single day and trades in her education. And so we say, hey, who's the toughest kid here? And there's always one that puts up their hand. And we go, okay, it's about a 5-minute video. How about you carry the jerry can while it's happening? And you see the kid like, yeah, I got this. And they pick up this 40-pound jerry can, and like halfway through the video, they're kind of shaking a little, and they don't want their friends to see. But usually that's the person that it impacts the most, is physically feeling what this person goes through. And it was a girl that was younger than her, or than him. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out, technologically wise, like, we want to make sure that we can reach as many people as possible, because cell phones seem to be the way. So we've launched in most of our schools through our tech system, through either a computer lab or through cell phones. But we want to make sure that if there were schools that you knew about, you can go online, you can come to Deedly.com, you can register a school that you love or that you know of, you can send an email to your friends and family back home, and you can say, hey, I want you to be able to sign up for this program. And a teacher, a club, a school, anyone, a principal can come online, they log on with us, we verify that they are a school, and then we send them everything for free. Everything for free, and they can start learning the next day, and start, it's from activation to activist. So we want to make sure that all these kids not only know what's happening in the world, but also, can do something about it. Of course. No, thank you. Send it to the schools back home.
Hey, we have a hand at the back, and then a few on the side.
Hi everyone, my name is Diana. I am with the NGO Committee of the Status of Women, and I wanted to ask, our forum in March is focused in a review of women in media. What would be your message for everyone there that day, or just shout out some points that you would like to
Well, I'm sure everyone can speak to that, and Surinder might have being on the talent side has a different perspective also. I think from the producer side in media, I think to try to find stories, I don't know, it's a hard question, because there's so many things. There's so many things that you want to say. I think in media, there is one of the things that I suffer from, that I'm not really good at, is that I have really great intentions, and I always want to do and say, tell everybody how to act, and my husband says I'm on a soapbox all the time. So I guess one of the things is, in media, how do you find ways to get your message across without being without sort of being on that soapbox, and doing it in a way like utilize media, utilize entertainment, utilize the things that work to get your message across in a way that is actually accessible to people. That has been a challenge for me personally, and it's something that I'm learning to do better, and I would definitely love to see more young women and women in media find their own way to do that, whether it's through television, films, anything that they're producing, anything that they're writing, and to do it in a way that it actually hits people and doesn't feel like you're trying to give them a lecture. It's hard, but that would be something that I would share from my personal experience.
I actually want to come back to something that Carlos was kind of very gingerly touched upon when he talked about the film Padman, because that's an example of Bollywood taking an issue that's actually shrouded in taboos. It's about the female menstrual cycle, and it's a story about how this movement has begun to make sanitary napkins available to girls, because girls in many parts of the world, even though this happens to be taking place in South Asia, in India, it's a disincentive for them to go to school because they don't have access to affordable sanitary napkins. And that's why it's called Padman. And who would have thunk it that Bollywood would choose something like this? But this is the power of media. In actual fact, to take an issue like this that people would not want to touch and make it into something that households, hopefully around the subcontinent and beyond, will go and watch, and hopefully the advocacy behind this will then really come home to make a point that this is how you help girls actually get an education, because you help them afford sanitary towels. So I'm on my soapbox, yeah. So here we go, please.
It's hard, see? There you go. I have a question for Ms. Surinder Swan. How did it feel to act like a person being abused on your show?
That's a really great question. When it comes to acting, you really have to immerse yourself in the role that you're taking on, and it can be very difficult when it's a role like this, and it's something that I had to prepare myself for. I've spent a lot of time with these women, and so there were a lot of phone calls because I wanted to make sure that, I was being accurate to what was happening. I remember one day on set, I showed up, and it was the scene where there was a lineup of us girls, and the buyer came in to basically purchase one of us for sale. And I walked in, and all of the girls were over 20. And this is an issue because that's not a correct statement, that it's not a correct visual. So I went to them and I said, hey guys, these girls need to be a lot younger. And I know it's going to be difficult because these women are going to have to stand there and know what it's like. So you can cast a 20-year-old, but she needs to look like she's 16 or 17 or 18. And they took a break and they went back and they brought in younger girls. And I remember talking to them and I was like, look, if you're going to be smiling and doing things like that, it has to be out of fear. It can't be out of, being uncomfortable, because this is not what it is. And so casting did a phenomenal job and was able to find girls that were willing to stand beside me in this message accurately as we could be on, on mainstream television. But I cried a lot. There was a lot of times that I went home and I cried for them, for myself, for the years that I wasted not doing anything, and for the ability to do something now. There was definitely a duality in how I was feeling, and not in a way of dismissing it, but being able to keep myself whole, because suffering never helped suffering. So if I went home broken every night, my voice would slowly start to slip away. So I definitely did as much research as I possibly could. One of my friends is here. Her mother was sold into sex trafficking, and I talked to her a lot, and I talked to the victims that your mother works with. And so I made sure that my voice was as accurate as possible. But it was even just being on television in that circumstance was horrific. And I remember talking to the girls after and being like, if you want to talk to me, if you need a second. And a lot of us just kind of like hugged and cried. And, it was only for a few minutes in our lives. And this is a lifetime for other people. So it really opened my eyes to my own eyes, even though I'd been there, to what it felt like to stand in a lineup and watch a man decide which one he wanted. No.
Okay, I think we're fast running out of time, but I think we'll take one more question. I see somebody all the way at the back there.
These microphones are amazing.
Society, and I empower people and enterprises to fulfill their commitment to humanity. I'd like to look at the football and the opportunity for sports from a slightly different angle. One of the most watched events, at least in America, is the Super Bowl. And it occurred to me that it's a great opportunity to introduce millions, over 100 million people, to the Sustainable Development Goals. And one way this could be managed is by having a commercial in which the top athletes of the top sports, football, baseball, tennis, soccer, you have the top athletes saying, you may think the world's biggest game is the Super Bowl or the football or tennis or soccer, but actually it's not. And having a series of these top athletes say that, and at the end saying the world's biggest game is actually the Sustainable Development Goals. And in this game, you can be the star, you can be the fan, you can be the cheerleader, you can be the owner, and whatever your passion is, whatever you're committed to, there's a place for you to create a game that's either existing and you can participate in that, or a new game that supports this. And this also could be produced by or funded by citizens of the world. It's very expensive to put an ad onto the Super Bowl, but if everyone, if the opportunity was for a fundraising campaign or social media campaign for people to contribute $1, $10, $50, that it actually can be owned by citizens of the world. It is their commercial, it is their investment, it is their stand that's there, and then they will, of course, tell all their friends to watch their commercial. So I think this is a great opportunity for participation, for empowerment. It's a national, for America, it's certainly a national platform, but it's also viewed globally, and by having top athletes in various sports beyond it, it makes it it crosses all sports, and also it could also be pairing these top athletes with ordinary athletes, quote unquote ordinary athletes, regular citizens who love playing sports. So it's not just the stars, the top athletes, but you understand that the commitment is shared not only by them, by the top athletes, but could be shared by every athlete.
Okay, Surinder would like to respond to that, but thank you for the idea. We should certainly have a place for these kinds of ideas to be funneled. Please, Surinder.
Yeah, I think that's incredible to be able to have those sort of ideas and bring people together. I think even just starting that conversation and putting the idea out there, you'll start talking to one another. One of my girlfriends, Erica, who's here right now, her and I had a breakfast together 3 years ago at South by Southwest, and I told her about victims of sex trafficking. And a year later, she had Microsoft on board. So it was that simple of a conversation, putting up that idea. It's getting change makers that come out and say, wait, I have an idea, or let me link you up to, a player or a friend of a player or whoever it is. And when you're like, yes, help me find somebody in the NFL, it's just starting that conversation. I always say a donation is not just monetary, it's the donation of your time, your voice, your platform, your friend list, whatever it is. And so when you have people like that are willing to support you and you put your idea out there, amazing things happen. I had no sponsors, and then Microsoft shows up. So it's one of those things, just putting that idea out there and being able to say what it is you wish or what you would like to happen. Maybe somebody on the panel, maybe somebody in the room, maybe somebody that I talk to at a later time that goes, what's a great idea? We'll be able to say, hey, I can bring that to fruition. Or this is a great television show. Hey, I'm actually already making it. So it's one of those things where the world is a lot smaller. So yeah, please keep saying ideas like that, and we'll see what we can put together. But that's great. I mean, the Super Bowl is one of the largest days of human trafficking. Every single year, that's one of the biggest events that women and children are trafficked. So that would be one that we would love to bring lots of awareness to, not only for human trafficking, but also for world issues. So great idea.
like to wrap up by firstly thanking all our panelists for coming here today to celebrate World Television/Video Day, because we are moving into a new realm. Thank you for all the ideas. They're always the seed of how exciting new things happen. And some of you in the audience will hopefully come together with our stars here, use their star power, use your connections, and of course the power of the United Nations to advocate on behalf of the peoples of the world. Because at the end of the day, when you watch something that's, features the United Nations, whether it's a Security Council meeting on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, think also that we're covering a whole range of issues, including the Sustainable Development Goals, human rights, peacekeeping, and a whole array of issues, such as the one that has consumed a lot of our time today, human trafficking, but so much more. And your ideas are very welcome. Thank you for attending, everybody, and please keep coming back to the United Nations.
Before you go, some of us, I at least, and some of my colleagues, I'm not sure who from the panel, will be at McFadden's on 42nd and 2nd Avenue. Early Thanksgiving drink, if you like, or just to continue discussing some of these ideas and seeing how we can make them happen. No.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Before everybody else, you get a group shot.
Oh, I work with Jaime.